Just a housewife. My husband Gabriel's words cut through the elegant restaurant as he raised his crystal glass. My dear Valerie here is the perfect example of knowing her place. Little did he know that in less than 24 hours I would reveal that I owned the very building where his prestigious law firm operated. His colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the chandelier light reflecting off the polished walnut table where Gabriel had gathered his most important clients. The private dining room at Meridien buzzed with the city's legal elite, partners from rival firms, potential clients, and most crucially, the board members of Archer Investments, whose business Gabriel desperately needed to secure his promotion to managing partner. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I maintained my practiced smile, the one I'd perfected through 8 years of marriage, smoothing the linen napkin across my lap as if it were the most important task in the world. My fingers traced the embroidered edge, counting, silently to control my breathing. 1, 2, 3. Gentlemen, let me tell you something about success, Gabriel continued, the ice cubes clinking against his tumbler as he gestured grandly. Behind every successful man is a woman who understands boundaries. Valerie here has mastered that art. Caught Amanda Reeves's eye across the arrangement of White Rose's centerpiece. As Archer Investments' chief financial officer, she'd been instrumental in our discussions about their commercial property portfolio, discussions Gabriel knew nothing about. Her slight frown was nearly imperceptible, but I recognized it as the same expression she wore when we negotiated particularly challenging deals. Valerie, darling, Gabriel's voice pulled me back to the present moment. Tell them about that cute little charity project you've been working on, the one with what was it again? Community gardens? The Downtown Revitalization Initiative, I corrected gently, knowing full well that Gabriel had never paid attention to my work outside our home. What he dismissed as a cute little charity project was actually the cornerstone of my commercial real estate investment strategy. A strategy that had allowed me to quietly acquire 6 buildings in the business district over the past 5 years, including the prestigious Riverside Tower where Gabriel's firm leased the top 3 floors. Yes, that's it, Gabriel waved his hand dismissively. Always keeping busy with those little projects. That's what makes her the perfect partner. Knows how to occupy herself without getting underfoot in matters she doesn't understand. I took a small sip of water, using the moment to collect myself. Around us, the waitstaff moved silently, replacing appetizer plates with the main course. The seared salmon before me remained untouched as I observed the reactions around the table. 3 phones being checked under tablecloths, 2 loosened ties, and Amanda Reeves subtly signaling to her colleague. After orchestrating dozens of dinners myself, I could spot a failing one from miles away. The Archer Investments team was not impressed, despite Gabriel's certainty that tonight would seal his firm's relationship with them. You know, Gabriel, Amanda spoke up, her voice carrying that quiet authority I'd admired since our first meeting 3 years ago. I'd actually be interested in hearing more about Valerie's downtown initiative. It aligns with several of our investment priorities. Oh, Amanda, Gabriel laughed, patting my hand condescendingly. That's very kind of you, but Valerie's project is really just a hobby. Nothing at the scale Archer would be interested in. Now, about the Harrison portfolio our firm has been structuring. I understand you're leasing the top floors at Riverside Tower, Amanda continued, ignoring Gabriel's attempt to redirect the conversation. Beautiful building. We've been looking at similar properties for our commercial division. I felt Gabriel tense beside me. Riverside Tower was the crown jewel of the downtown commercial real estate market, and his firm's lease there was both prestigious and precarious. The 10-year agreement was coming up for renewal in just 3 months, a detail Gabriel had been stressing about privately for weeks. Yes, absolute prime location. Gabriel recovered quickly. We were fortunate to secure it when we did. The owner is quite the mysterious figure, Some private investment group that operates through layers of management companies. Never met them myself, but our firm's location there certainly impresses the clients. My phone vibrated silently in my lap, and I glanced down to see a message from my property manager. Riverside lease renewal documents prepared as discussed. Need signature by tomorrow to proceed with new terms. Actually, Amanda said, her eyes meeting mine briefly, we've heard rumors the ownership might be changing hands soon. Have you received any communication about your lease renewal? Gabriel's smile faltered for just a moment. Nothing definitive, but I'm sure it will be routine. Our firm is the building's anchor tenant after all. They'd be foolish to lose us. If he'd been more observant, he might have noticed the slight smile that crossed my lips, or the knowing look exchanged between Amanda and me. If he'd been less focused on impressing everyone at the table, he might have wondered why the CFO of Archer Investments seemed so interested in his office building rather than his legal expertise. A toast, Gabriel suddenly declared, raising his glass. 2 successful partnerships, both in business and in marriage, though some of us are clearly better suited to one sphere than the other. He turned to me with what he probably thought was an indulgent smile. No offense, darling, but some of us are just meant for bigger things. The business world requires a certain gravitas that you can't learn from planning dinner parties and charity fundraisers. I raised my glass along with the others, my smile never wavering. If Gabriel had been more attentive, he might have noticed it didn't reach my eyes. Speaking of your charity work, Marcus Daniels, Archer's CEO, spoke up. I was at the Chamber of Commerce Gala last month, and your name came up in quite an interesting context. Gabriel straightened, instantly alert. Oh? Was my wife causing trouble again? He laughed, but I could hear the note of uncertainty. Actually, Marcus continued, someone mentioned that the Downtown Revitalization Initiative had secured private ownership of nearly 30% of the prime commercial real estate in the business district. Quite impressive for what did you call it, Gabriel? A cute little charity project? The table fell uncomfortably silent. Gabriel's laugh was strained. There must be some confusion. Valerie organizes community cleanups and fundraisers. Nothing at that scale. He turned. To me, right, darling. All eyes shifted to me. For a brief moment, I considered continuing the charade, the same one I'd maintained for years while building my real estate portfolio under my maiden name. But something in Gabriel's dismissive tone, the absolute certainty with which he defined my capabilities, made something shift inside me. The initiative has grown considerably in recent years, I said carefully, setting down my glass. We've been particularly focused on revitalizing the commercial district through strategic property acquisition. Property acquisition? Gabriel repeated, his brow furrowing. You never mentioned... Mr. Williams, one of the waiters approached our table, addressing Gabriel. There's an urgent call for you at the reception desk. Something about tomorrow morning's court appearance. Gabriel excused himself reluctantly, squeezing my shoulder as he passed. A gesture others might mistake for affection, but I felt the warning pressure behind it. As soon as he was out of earshot, Amanda leaned forward. Is everything prepared? For tomorrow's announcement? I nodded, taking out my phone to show her the press release draft. Riverside Management Group reveals true ownership and announces new leasing strategy. The timing couldn't be more perfect. He really has no idea. Does he? Marcus asked, looking genuinely amazed. Gabriel sees what he expects to see, I replied, slipping my phone away as I spotted him returning. And he expects to see just a housewife. The evening continued with Gabriel growing increasingly confident as the wine flowed. With each dismissive comment about my capabilities, with each interruption when I attempted to speak, he was unwittingly setting the stage for tomorrow's revelation. As we drove home later that night, Gabriel was elated, convinced the dinner had been a triumph. Did you see how engaged Marcus was? And Amanda practically promised to bring us their business. They seemed very interested, I agreed neutrally, turning onto the road that would take us home. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A home purchased through my investment company, though Gabriel believed we'd bought it with his law firm bonus. "This is it, Val," he continued, not noticing my lack of enthusiasm. "This is the case that makes me managing partner. Just think, in a few weeks, we'll be hosting a celebration dinner. You can put together one of your perfect parties." I watched him from the corner of my eye, this man who had spent years defining my worth, confining my identity to the roles he deemed appropriate. Tomorrow, everything would change. Not because I sought revenge, but because it was finally time for the truth. "We should discuss the Riverside Tower situation," I ventured, testing the waters. "Your lease renewal is coming up soon." Gabriel waved dismissively. "Don't worry about that, Val. That's business stuff. I'll handle it. You just focus on planning that celebration party. That's what you're good at." As we pulled into our driveway, I made my decision. 8 years was long enough to live in the shadow of someone else's perception. Tomorrow, Gabriel would learn that while he was busy telling everyone what I couldn't do, I was quietly building an empire, one that included the very roof over his professional head. Just a housewife, he'd called me. Tomorrow, he would learn exactly what this housewife was capable of. That night, as Gabriel slept soundly beside me, convinced of his professional triumph, I lay awake thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment of decision. 8 years earlier, I'd met Gabriel Williams at a charity auction benefiting the city's Historical Preservation Society. I was there representing my family's foundation, the modest but respectable trust my grandmother had established before her death. Back then, I was still Valerie Taylor, recent MBA graduate and cautious inheritor of my grandmother's small reel. Estate portfolio: 3 commercial properties in what was then the unfashionable part of downtown. "You work in real estate?" Gabriel had asked after introductions, his tone suggesting mild amusement. "Let me guess. Residential sales? Helping young couples find their dream homes?" "Commercial property management, actually," I'd corrected him, already noting his tendency to make assumptions. "Interesting hobby," he'd replied, clearly not taking it seriously. "I'm an attorney with Blackwell & Pierce. We represent some of the largest property developers in the region." In those early days, I'd found his confidence appealing. Gabriel moved through the world with an assurance I envied, having grown up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to put me through college. When we married 6 months later, I'd already begun to adapt to his expectations, finding it easier to let him believe what he wanted about my business acumen than to constantly defend my capabilities. "Why fight it?" My business mentor, Eleanor Simmons, had asked when I confided in her about Gabriel's dismissive attitude. "Let him underestimate you. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage in business." Following her advice, I'd created a separate professional identity. While Gabriel believed I was running a small community foundation, I was steadily building Taylor Holdings, operating under my maiden name with a small, fiercely loyal team who understood the need for discretion. The initial buildings my grandmother left me became the seed capital for a strategic acquisition plan. I focused on undervalued properties in the areas city planners had earmarked for future development. What Gabriel dismissed as my charity work with the Downtown Revitalization Initiative gave me insider knowledge about zoning changes and infrastructure improvements years before they became public. By our 3rd anniversary, my portfolio had tripled. By our 5th, Taylor Holdings owned 12 commercial properties and had minority stakes in 2 development projects. All while Gabriel believed I was keeping busy with foundation work and homemaking. The Riverside Tower acquisition had been my masterstroke, the culmination of 3 years of careful planning. When the opportunity arose to purchase the building housing Gabriel's law firm, I couldn't resist the poetic symmetry. Here was tangible proof of what I'd built while being systematically underestimated. I still remembered signing the final paperwork, using the Mont Blanc pen I'd gifted myself after closing my first major deal. The property manager had looked at me curiously. "The primary tenant is Blackwell and Pierce Law," he'd noted. "Any connection?" "Just make sure they receive the standard communications through the management company," I'd replied. "No special treatment." For 2 years, I'd maintained the separation between Riverside Towers' ownership and my marriage. Gabriel had never once suspected, even when complaining about building management issues over dinner. I'd listen sympathetically as he grumbled about lease terms or maintenance requests, offering the supportive responses he expected from a wife, while making mental notes to address valid concerns through proper channels. The deception had never been about revenge or power games. It was simply easier to operate in a world where I wasn't constantly fighting against Gabriel's preconceptions. But somewhere along the way, the distance between my public and private identities had begun to wear on me. The constant code switching, businesswoman by day, just a housewife by evening, had started to feel less like a strategic choice and more like an erasure of my authentic self. I turned in bed, watching Gabriel's peaceful sleeping face in the moonlight filtering through our bedroom curtains. After all our years together, he still didn't truly know me. The question that had been growing in my mind for months now demanded an answer. Was a marriage built on such profound misconception worth preserving? My phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. A text from Amanda Reeves. "Confirmed for 9 a.m. meeting. Press release prepared. Are you still proceeding as discussed?" I typed back a simple yes, then set the phone down, my decision made. The alarm chimed at 5:30 a.m. I slipped out of bed while Gabriel continued sleeping, his late night of celebration ensuring he wouldn't stir for hours yet. By 6:15, I was dressed in my power suit, a tailored navy ensemble I kept in the spare closet, one Gabriel had never seen me wear. I applied my makeup with careful precision, transforming from Valerie Williams, supportive wife, to Valerie Taylor, CEO of Taylor Holdings. The early morning light cast long shadows across our kitchen as I prepared coffee, leaving enough in the pot for Gabriel when he eventually woke. Out of habit, I almost wrote a note explaining my absence. A foundation meeting, a charity committee, the usual excuses, but stopped myself mid-sentence. After today, the excuses would no longer be necessary. I drove downtown as the city was just beginning to wake. The streets were quiet, most of the business district still dark except for security lighting. Riverside Tower, however, rose against the dawn sky like a beacon, its glass exterior catching the first rays of sunlight. I pulled into the private underground garage, using the keycard that Gabriel didn't know I possessed, and parked in the spot-marked owner reserved. The executive elevator required a special access code, bypassing the lobby and security desk where I might be recognized as Mrs. Williams from the law firm. Instead, it deposited me directly on the 30th floor, one level below where Gabriel's firm began their suite of offices. "Good morning, Ms. Taylor," my assistant Rebecca greeted me as I entered the Taylor Holdings executive suite. Few people knew that while Gabriel and his colleagues worked on floors 31 through 33, I operated my business just one floor below them. "Everything is prepared for this morning's announcement. The press release will go out at exactly 9 a.m. I nodded, taking the folder she handed me. "And the new lease terms for Blackwell and Pierce?" "Prepared as requested," Rebecca replied. "No, increase in rent, but the updated terms require them to participate in the building's sustainability initiatives and community engagement programs. We've also included the right of first refusal on the additional floor space they've been wanting." These were fair terms, better than fair, actually. Despite Gabriel's behavior, I had no desire to punish his firm or jeopardize the livelihoods of the hundreds of people who worked there. This revelation wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. "The Archer Investments team will be here at 8:30, Rebecca continued. They're very interested in discussing partnership opportunities now that our ownership structure will be public. This was the business benefit of my decision. The opportunity to operate openly would allow Taylor Holdings to expand our partnerships and raise capital for larger projects. Keeping my identity secret had served its purpose during the building phase, but had become a limitation as we grew. Ms. Taylor. Rebecca hesitated, her professional demeanor slipping slightly. If you don't mind my asking, how do you think your husband will react when he finds out? I moved to the wall of windows that offered a panoramic view of the awakening city, the same city where I'd quietly built my empire while being dismissed as just a housewife. Gabriel sees what he expects to see, I replied, echoing the words I'd shared with Marcus the night before. And he's never expected to see me as a business equal. As the morning progressed, I reviewed the press materials with my PR team, confirmed details with legal, and prepared for the cascade of inquiries that would follow the announcement. At 8:30, Amanda Reeves and Marcus Daniels arrived with their investment team, eager to discuss the commercial development partnership we'd been quietly planning for months. The timing couldn't be better, Marcus noted as we reviewed the proposal. With downtown property values rising, your portfolio positioning is exactly what our investors have been looking for. And your husband still has no idea? Amanda asked, unable to hide her curiosity. He's about to find out, I replied, glancing at my watch. It was 8:55 a.m. In 5 minutes, the press release would hit the business wires. Taylor Holdings reveals ownership of prestigious Riverside Tower and 6 additional downtown properties. CEO Valerie Taylor announces innovative community business partnership initiative. Simultaneously, a formal notice would be delivered to all Riverside Tower tenants, including Blackwell and Pierce, introducing them to the building's owner and inviting them to a reception that evening to discuss the new community-focused vision for the property. At precisely 9 a.m., Rebecca knocked on the conference room door. It's done, she said simply. The press release has gone out. As if on cue, my phone began to buzz with incoming messages. I excused myself from the Archer team and stepped into my office to check them. 3 were from my executive team confirming media inquiries. 2 were from other building tenants expressing surprise and congratulations, and 1 was from Gabriel. What the hell is going on? There's a press release saying Riverside Tower is owned by Taylor Holdings with you as CEO. This has to be a mistake. Call me now. I set my phone down on the desk, taking a moment to steady my breathing. 8 years of leading a double life were about to end. 8 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and defined by someone else's limited perception. Rebecca, I called to my assistant, please let security know that Mr. Williams from Blackwell and Pierce may be coming down to our floor. When he arrives, show him directly to my office. The first tremors of the earthquake I'd just triggered were beginning to spread. Soon, Gabriel would face the reality that the woman he'd dismissed as just a housewife at last night's dinner was actually his landlord, a successful CEO, and the owner of a real estate portfolio worth over $200 million. I returned to the conference room where the Archer team waited, forcing myself to focus on business while my personal life teetered on the brink of transformation. The next hour passed in a blur of negotiations and strategic planning. Through it all, I maintained my professional composure, though my mind kept returning to Gabriel and the confrontation that was inevitably coming. At 10:15 a.m., Rebecca appeared at the door again. Her expression told me everything I needed to know. Taylor, she said, her voice carefully neutral, Mr. Williams is here to see you. He seems quite insistent. I nodded, excusing myself from the meeting. As I walked toward my office, I caught a glimpse of Gabriel through the glass walls. He stood with his back to me, staring out at the view of the city. The same view visible from his office 1 floor above, yet somehow completely different from this perspective. 8 years of lies by omission were about to end. 8 years of just a housewife were about to be redefined. As I reached for the door handle, I took a deep breath. preparing to finally introduce my husband to the woman I truly was. I paused at my office door, observing Gabriel through the glass. His normally impeccable appearance was disheveled, tie loosened, hair mussed from repeatedly running his hands through it. He hadn't even taken the time to properly knot his tie before rushing downtown. In 8 years of marriage, I'd rarely seen him looking so undone. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. "Hello, Gabriel." He spun around, his expression a volatile mix of confusion, anger, and disbelief. For a moment, he simply stared as if seeing me for the first time, taking in my tailored suit, the executive office with my name on the door, the wall of industry awards I'd never displayed at. "Home. What is this?" he finally managed, gesturing wildly around the room. "Some kind of joke? A prank?" "No joke," I replied calmly, closing the door behind me. "This is Taylor Holdings, my company." "Your company?" He repeated the words as if they were in a foreign language. "Since when do you have a company? And what's this nonsense about you owning Riverside Tower, our firm's building?" I moved to my desk, gesturing for him to take a seat across from me. He remained standing, too agitated to sit. "Taylor Holdings has owned Riverside Tower for just over 2 years now," I explained, keeping my voice steady and professional. "Along with 6 other commercial properties in the downtown area. I've been building this company for 8 years, Gabriel. Since before we were married." "That's impossible," he scoffed, though his certainty was clearly wavering as he took in the evidence surrounding him. "You run a small charity foundation. You plan dinner parties and fundraisers. You're a housewife?" I finished for him, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, that's what you told everyone at dinner last night." What was the phrase? "The perfect example of knowing her place." Gabriel had the grace to look momentarily abashed, but quickly rallied. "This doesn't make any sense. If you've owned our building for 2 years, why keep it secret? Why the elaborate deception? Is this some kind of bizarre revenge scheme?" I sighed, realizing how difficult it would be for him to understand a perspective so foreign to his own. It wasn't about revenge, Gabriel. It was about practicality. From the day we met, you made assumptions about my capabilities and interests. You decided who I was and what I could do, and any attempt to correct those assumptions was met with dismissal or condescension. "That's not true," he protested, but without conviction. "Isn't it? Last night at dinner I tried to speak about business 6 times. Each time you interrupted me, spoke over me, or explained to everyone why my opinion wasn't relevant." That was different. I was trying to impress clients. By belittling. "Your wife?" I asked quietly. By making it clear to everyone at the table that my thoughts weren't worth hearing? He ran a hand through his hair again, his frustration evident. "Fine. Maybe I was dismissive. But that doesn't explain all this." He gestured around the office again. "Why the secret identity? Why not just tell me you had a business?" I moved to the credenza and opened a folder, withdrawing a stack of newspaper and magazine clippings. Each featured a photo of a commercial property and a small mention of its acquisition by Taylor Holdings. "I tried to tell you, Gabriel. For the first 2 years of our marriage, I brought up my business interests regularly. Each time you redirected the conversation, changed the subject, or simply tuned out." I handed him a framed article from the Business Journal dated 6 years earlier. The headline read, "Taylor Holdings acquires historic Madison building." A small photo showed me shaking hands with the seller. "I left this on the coffee table for a week," I told him. "You used it as a coaster for your scotch." Gabriel stared. At the article, recognition slowly dawning. "I remember this building. Wasn't this part of your charity project? The renovation of old downtown structures?" "That was the explanation you created," I replied. "When I talked about acquiring the Madison building, you assumed it was for the downtown revitalization initiative, not as a commercial investment." You heard what you wanted to hear. So instead of correcting me, you just created a secret. Life? His tone was incredulous, but I could see the first hints of understanding beginning to penetrate. It wasn't a deliberate deception at first, I explained, returning to my desk. It was simply easier to let you believe what you wanted rather than constantly fighting for validation. But over time, as Taylor Holdings grew, maintaining the separation became more complex. And Riverside Tower? Our building? Was that deliberate? There was a harder edge to his voice now. The opportunity presented itself, I admitted. The previous owner was facing bankruptcy and needed to sell quickly. It was a sound business decision. Gabriel sank into the chair across from me, finally overwhelmed enough to sit. I don't understand. If you've been running all this, he gestured vaguely at the office, then what was all that charity work you were always doing? The downtown revitalization initiative? The endless meetings and fundraisers? The initiative is real, I explained. It's the philanthropic arm of Taylor Holdings. We dedicate a percentage of our profits to community improvement projects in the areas where we own property. It's good for the community and good for property values. A win-win strategy. He fell silent, processing this information. I could almost see him reconstructing our 8 years together, reinterpreting countless conversations and interactions through this new lens. All those nights you stayed up working on foundation reports, he said slowly. Quarterly financial statements. Acquisition proposals, development plans, I confirmed. The charity galas where you networked with community leaders. Business development meetings, relationship building with potential partners and investors. Your committee that meets every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. My executive team. We have a standing strategy meeting. Gabriel's expression shifted from confusion to something more complex, a mixture of disbelief, grudging respect, and wounded pride. Why reveal everything now? He asked. After all this time, why go public? It was a fair question, and one I'd carefully considered over the past months. 2 reasons, I replied honestly. First, Taylor Holdings has reached a point where operating through shell companies and management firms is limiting our growth potential. To move forward with our expansion plans, particularly the partnership with Archer Investments, we need to establish a public identity. Gabriel's head snapped up. Archer Investments? Is that why Amanda Reeves was asking all those questions about Riverside Tower last night? She knew? I nodded. Amanda and I have been discussing a joint venture for several months. While you sat, there letting me pontificate about business to people who knew you were... He trailed off, the full humiliation of the previous evening finally dawning on him. That brings me to the second reason, I continued quietly. I'm tired of living a fragmented life, Gabriel. I'm tired of being one person in this office and someone entirely different at home. Last night at dinner, listening to you describe me as just a housewife while Amanda and Marcus, people who know and respect my business acumen, sat there uncomfortably. It crystallized something I've been feeling for a long time. And what's that? He asked, his voice barely audible. That. A marriage shouldn't require one person to make themselves smaller to accommodate the other's ego. The words hung between us, their truth undeniable. Gabriel flinched slightly but didn't argue. My phone buzzed with an incoming message. Rebecca was checking if I needed security. Gabriel's arrival had caused quite a stir in the office. I quickly replied that everything was under control. So what happens now? Gabriel finally asked, looking around the office as if seeing me for the first time. With the building? With our marriage? With everything? The building is simple, I replied. Blackwell and Pierce will receive the same new lease terms as all other tenants. Fair market rates with incentives for community engagement. Nothing changes operationally. And us? His voice was uncharacteristically vulnerable. I hadn't expected this question so soon, hadn't fully formulated my answer. For 8 years, Our marriage had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding, not just about what I did, but about who I was. Could such a foundation be rebuilt? That depends, I said honestly, on whether you can see me, really see me, as I am. Not as just a housewife, not as an extension of yourself, but as a full person with ambitions and capabilities that might equal or even exceed your own. Gabriel's phone began ringing insistently. He glanced at it, then silenced it without answering. "The office is probably in chaos," he said. "The managing partners must have seen the press release by now." "They'll have questions," I acknowledged. "As will the other tenants, the press, and everyone else. That's why we're hosting a reception this evening, to introduce myself properly and outline our vision going forward." "Our vision," he repeated, a hint of bitterness in his tone. "You've had this all planned out, haven't you? Down to the last detail." "Not everything," I countered. "I didn't plan how you would react. I didn't know if you'd be angry, impressed, or simply walk away." "And which would you prefer?" he asked, meeting my gaze directly for the first time since entering my office. The question caught me off guard. In all my planning, I'd focused on the logistics of the revelation, not its aftermath. What did I want from Gabriel? Validation? Apology? Or simply acceptance of who I truly was? "I'd prefer honesty," I said finally. "Real recognition, not performed admiration. I don't need you to be impressed, Gabriel. I just need you to see me." He nodded slowly, then stood. "I need time to process this. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, it's all different now." "I understand," I replied, also rising. "Take whatever time you need." Gabriel moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "The Downtown Revitalization Initiative reception next week, the one you've been planning for months, is that the official launch of our partnership with Archer Investments and the unveiling of our community development plan for the Madison district?" "Yes." He shook his head, a wry smile briefly crossing his face. "You invited all my colleagues. You even had me help with the guest list. Everyone who matters in commercial real estate and property law will be there," I confirmed. "It's an important milestone for Taylor Holdings." And all this time, I thought I was helping with a charity event. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been so blind. As Gabriel left, I remained standing by my desk, experiencing a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. For 8 years, I'd maintained a careful separation between my professional identity and my marriage. Now those worlds had collided, and the aftermath was impossible to predict. My phone buzzed again, Rebecca reminding me that the Archer team was still waiting to continue our meeting. Beyond them, a day full of press inquiries, tenant questions, and strategic planning stretched ahead. The revelation of Taylor Holdings' ownership structure was just the beginning of a new chapter for the company. As for my marriage, that future was far less certain. Gabriel now faced the challenge of reconciling the wife he thought he knew with the business leader who had been operating just one floor below his law firm all this time. Whether our relationship could survive such a fundamental reassessment remained to be seen. I gathered my materials and prepared to return to the conference room, compartmentalizing my personal concerns to focus on business, just as I'd done for years. The difference was that now, finally, I could do so as my complete self, not just a housewife, but Valerie Taylor Williams, in full. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of meetings, press inquiries, and congratulatory calls. By mid-afternoon, the story had been picked up by every major business publication in the city. The headlines varied but carried the same essential message. Secret real estate mogul reveals identity, Taylor Holdings CEO unveils 200-meter portfolio, and my personal favorite from the Business Chronicle, the housewife was a tycoon all along. I'd anticipated media interest, but the personal angle, The fact that I'd built this empire while my husband, a prominent attorney, remained oblivious, had catapulted the story beyond business news into human interest territory. My phone had been ringing constantly with requests for interviews, profiles, and television appearances. The Wall Street Journal wants to do a feature, Rebecca informed me, handing over yet another message slip, and 3 women's business magazines have called about cover stories. I nodded, adding it to the growing pile on my desk. My PR team was carefully vetting all requests, prioritizing those that would highlight Taylor Holdings' business strategy rather than sensationalizing my personal life. Still, I knew the dual narrative was impossible to avoid completely. At 4:30 p.m., I finally had a moment alone in my office. The Archer Investments team had departed with a signed letter of intent for our partnership. Legal had reviewed all the bonds. Tenant communications regarding the ownership revelation and preparations for the evening's reception were well underway in the building's atrium. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, swiveling my chair to face the windows. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the city skyline. My city, the landscape I'd been quietly reshaping for years while being dismissed as inconsequential. My phone buzzed with a text from Gabriel. "Will you be home tonight or staying?" At the reception, the message carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Would I be coming home to our shared space, or had today's revelation irrevocably altered that arrangement too? I hadn't decided yet. Reception ends at 9. Not sure after that. Need time to think, I replied honestly. 3 dots appeared as he typed, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, I understand. For what it's worth, I've been doing a lot of thinking too. Before I could respond, Rebecca knocked on my door. "Ms. Taylor, the setup team needs you in the atrium to approve the final arrangements, and your stylist is here with options for this evening." I nodded, setting my phone aside. The personal reckoning with Gabriel would have to wait. Right now, Taylor Holdings needed its CEO. The building's soaring atrium had been transformed for the evening's reception. Elegant lighting highlighted the architectural features, while strategic floral arrangements created intimate conversation areas throughout the vast space. A small stage had been set up at one end, where I would make brief remarks later in the evening. "Everything looks perfect," I told the event coordinator, surveying the space. "We've confirmed 87 attendees so far," she reported, including representatives from all major tenants, local business leaders, and several city officials. "And Blackwell and Pierce?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. 5 partners confirmed, including the managing partner, Mr. Blackwell. No response from Mr. Williams. I nodded, unsurprised. Gabriel was still processing the morning's revelation. Attending a reception celebrating the woman who had upended his understanding of his marriage might be more than he could manage right now. As I returned to my office to prepare for the evening, Eleanor Simmons was waiting for me. My first business mentor and longtime confidant, Eleanor had been one of the few people who knew about both sides of my life from the beginning. "Well," she said, rising to embrace me warmly, "the secret's finally out. How does it feel to be fully yourself for the first time in 8 years?" "Exhausting," I admitted with a small laugh. "But also liberating." "And Gabriel?" she asked, her expression softening with concern. "How did he take it?" I sank into the chair beside her, suddenly grateful for the presence of someone who understood the full complexity of my situation. "About as well as you'd expect," I replied. "Shocked, confused, a bit angry. Mostly, I think his pride is wounded." Eleanor nodded knowingly. Men like Gabriel build their identities around being the provider, the knower, the protector. Learning that his wife not only didn't need that protection, but was actually operating at a level that exceeded his own, that's a fundamental challenge to his self-concept. "I never meant to humiliate him," I said quietly. "That wasn't the point of any of this." "I know that," Eleanor assured me. "The question is whether he can come to understand it too." We were interrupted by the arrival of my stylist with several outfit options for the evening's reception. Eleanor excused herself, promising to return for the event, leaving me to transform once again. This time from CEO Valerie Taylor to public figure Valerie Williams Taylor, making her debut in both business and social circles as her complete self. The reception began at 6:30 p.m. Standing in the private elevator that would take me to the atrium, I felt a momentary flutter of nerves. For years, I'd operated in the shadows, building relationships one-on-one, letting my results speak for themselves. Tonight would be different, a public declaration of who I was and what I'd built. The doors opened, and I stepped into my new reality. "Ms. Taylor," the building manager greeted me, using my professional name for the first time in a public setting. "Everyone is eager to meet you." The next 2 hours passed in a whirlwind of introductions, congratulations, and business discussions. I moved through the crowd, speaking with tenants who were just discovering that the woman they'd occasionally seen in the elevator was actually their landlord, networking with business leaders who were reassessing their understanding of the city's commercial real estate landscape, and reassuring investors that Taylor Holdings' public emergence would only strengthen our market position. Throughout it all, I kept finding myself scanning the room for Gabriel. Despite our complicated situation, some part of me had hoped he might appear, if not to support me, then at least to begin the process of reconciling the wife he thought he knew with the business leader now commanding the attention of the entire room. At 8:15 p.m., I was speaking with the city's economic development director when I saw a familiar figure enter the atrium. Gabriel stood just inside the entrance, surveying the scene with an unreadable expression. He'd changed from his earlier disheveled appearance into an impeccably tailored suit, the one he reserved for court appearances and important client meetings. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, everything else seemed to fade into the background. Then Amanda Reeves approached him, saying something that drew his attention away. I watched as she introduced him to Marcus Daniels and several other Archer executives, pulling him into what appeared to be a serious business conversation. "Ms. Taylor," the event coordinator touched my elbow gently. "We're ready for your remarks whenever you are." I nodded, directing my focus back to the task at hand. The personal drama with Gabriel would need to wait. Right now, I had a company to formally introduce to the world. Taking my place at the podium, I surveyed the gathered crowd. Business leaders who had dismissed me at countless social events now looked up with newfound respect. Building tenants who had dealt with my management company without ever knowing who owned their office space listened attentively. And at the back of the room, slightly apart from the others, stood Gabriel, my husband, who was seeing me truly, for the first time. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling beneath the surface. "For many of you, this reception is an introduction. For others, it's a reintroduction under very different circumstances. I am Valerie Taylor Williams, founder and CEO of Taylor Holdings." I paused, allowing the reality of that statement to settle over the room. 8 years ago, I began acquiring undervalued properties in this city's downtown core, starting with a small portfolio inherited from my grandmother. Today, Taylor Holdings owns 7 commercial buildings, including Riverside Tower, and has minority stakes in 4 development projects currently underway. Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience as I outlined the company's growth and our vision for the future. The partnership with Archer Investments, our community development initiatives, and our commitment to revitalizing the downtown area through sustainable, people-centered design. Some of you may be wondering why I chose to operate in relative anonymity until now, I continued, addressing the question everyone had been too polite to ask directly. The answer is simple. I wanted our properties and our business practices to speak for themselves, without preconceptions or assumptions influencing how our work was perceived. My gaze found Gabriel's across the room. He was watching me intently, his expression still unreadable. But there comes a point when remaining in the shadows limits what you can accomplish. Taylor Holdings has reached that inflection point. To fully realize our vision for this city's future, we need to step into the light, build transparent partnerships, and engage openly with the community we serve. As I concluded my remarks and opened the floor for questions, I noticed Gabriel slipping out a side door. My heart sank slightly, though I maintained my professional composure through the Q&A session that followed. By 9:30 p.m., the reception was winding down. I'd spoken personally with nearly every attendee, answered countless questions about Taylor Holdings' future plans, and scheduled follow-up meetings with several potential partners. By any business measure, the evening had been an unqualified success. And yet, as the last guests departed and the cleanup crew began breaking down the event, I felt a lingering sense of incompletion. The professional revelation had gone according to plan, but the personal reconciliation remained unresolved. "Congratulations," Eleanor said, joining me as I gathered my things. "You've officially arrived as a public figure in this city's business community." "Thank you," I replied, mustering a smile. "For everything, your mentorship, your discretion all these years, your support today." Eleanor studied me carefully. "You're thinking about Gabriel." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "He left without saying goodbye." "Give him time," she advised gently. "This is a lot for anyone to process, especially someone as prideful as your husband." I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. "I'm not sure where to go from here," I admitted. "Home feels complicated right now." "My guest house is always available," Eleanor offered. "Or you could stay in a hotel tonight. Give yourself some space to think." After a moment's consideration, I made my decision. "No, I need to go home. Avoiding Gabriel won't resolve anything." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "That's the Valerie I know, facing challenges head-on." As my car pulled out of the Riverside Tower garage, I felt the weight of the day's events settling over me. The professional triumph, the media attention, the successful reception, all overshadowed by the uncertain state of my marriage. The drive home took me through downtown, past buildings I owned and developments I'd helped shape. The city looked different tonight, as if the mere act of publicly claiming my role in its evolution had physically transformed the landscape. When I turned onto our street, I was surprised to see lights on throughout our house. Gabriel's car was in the driveway, along with another I didn't recognize. Pulling alongside them, I sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts before going inside. The front door opened before I reached it. Gabriel stood in the entryway, his expression still guarded, but less shocked than it had been that morning. "You have a visitor," he said simply, stepping aside to reveal Amanda Reeves sitting in our living room. "Amanda," I said, surprised. "I thought you'd left the reception hours ago." "I did," she replied, rising from the sofa. "But there was something important I needed to discuss with both you and Gabriel." I glanced between them, noting Gabriel's carefully neutral expression and Amanda's unusually serious demeanor. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my bag. "After you left the reception," Amanda explained, "Gabriel approached me with some questions about our partnership plans for the Madison District project." I turned to Gabriel, confused. "You were asking about my business deals?" He nodded, hands in his pockets. "I realized I know absolutely nothing about what you actually do. If we're going to have any chance of moving forward from this, I need to understand." Something tight in my chest loosened slightly at his words. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but a willingness to learn. It was more than I had dared to hope for just hours earlier. "So I invited Amanda here," Gabriel continued, "to walk me through the Archer partnership, and to ask her a question I should have asked you years ago." "What question?" I asked softly. Gabriel's expression shifted, vulnerability momentarily breaking. Through his careful composure, I asked her if you were any good at what you do. I held my breath, looking to Amanda, who was watching me with unmistakable respect. And I told him, she said, that Valerie Taylor isn't just good. She's brilliant. That she sees opportunities others miss, builds relationships others can't manage, and has created more value in 8 years than most developers achieve in a lifetime. The room fell silent as Gabriel absorbed this assessment, professional validation, of my capabilities from a source he couldn't dismiss. "Thank you, Amanda," I said finally, genuinely moved by her advocacy. "I should go," she replied, gathering her coat. "You two have a lot to discuss, and we have a 9 a.m. meeting tomorrow to finalize the partnership details." As Amanda left, the house seemed suddenly larger, the silence between Gabriel and me expanding to fill every corner. We stood facing each other in the living room, husband and wife, yet strangers in many ways. "I don't know who you are," Gabriel said quietly. 8 years of marriage, and I've been living with someone I never actually saw. The words stung, but I couldn't deny their truth. "You never wanted to see that part of me," I replied. "From the beginning, you put me in a box labeled wife and refused to acknowledge anything that didn't fit that narrow definition." "That's not fair," he protested. "You deliberately kept secrets. Only after you made it clear you weren't interested in the truth," I countered, feeling 8 years of suppressed frustration rising to the surface. "Do you know how many times I tried to talk to you about my business in those early years? How many times you changed the subject or looked bored, or patted my hand and said, 'That's nice, dear'?" Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, a habit when he was distressed. "I didn't realize—" "Exactly," I interrupted. "You didn't realize because you weren't paying attention. You were too busy constructing a narrative about who I was and what I was capable of to notice who I actually am." The hard truth hung between us like a physical presence. Gabriel moved to the window, looking out at the garden I'd designed, another aspect of our life together that he'd never fully appreciated. "I need to ask you something," he said finally, turning back to face me. "And I need you to be completely honest." I nodded, bracing myself. "Are you still in love with me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or has pretending to be someone else for all these years killed whatever feelings you once had?" It was the one question I hadn't prepared, for the one vulnerability I hadn't allowed myself to examine too closely. As the silence stretched between us, I realized Gabriel was holding his breath, waiting for my answer. An answer that would determine whether we had any future together at all. "Yes," I said quietly, answering Gabriel's question about whether I still loved him. But not the version of us we've been living. I fell in love with a brilliant, ambitious attorney who challenged me intellectually. Somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your equal and started seeing me as an accessory to your success. Gabriel absorbed this, his expression thoughtful rather than defensive. A promising sign. "I need time to process all of this," he said finally. "Not just the business revelation, but what it means for us." I nodded, understanding his need for space. "I have an early meeting tomorrow with the Archer team. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." As I turned to leave, Gabriel spoke again. "Valerie, wait. There's one more thing I need to know." I paused, looking back at him. "If I hadn't dismissed you so thoroughly at that dinner last night, would you have gone through with the public revelation today? Was that the final straw?" It was a perceptive question, one that cut to the heart of my decision-making process. "The business announcement was already scheduled," I replied honestly. "But I might have prepared you privately first if last night hadn't been such a stark reminder of how you see me." He nodded, accepting this truth. "Good night, Valerie." "Good night, Gabriel." Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing with the implications of the day's events. By 5 a.m., I gave up trying and slipped quietly downstairs to make coffee. To my surprise, Gabriel was already in the kitchen, staring out the window at the garden beginning to emerge in the pre-dawn light. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked, moving to the coffee maker. He shook his head. "Too much to think about." We worked around each other in silence, the familiar domestic choreography at odds with the profound shift in our relationship. I prepared my usual morning smoothie while Gabriel toasted a bagel, neither of us acknowledging the strangeness of maintaining these routines amid such upheaval. "I've been reading about you," Gabriel said finally, sliding his tablet across the counter. The screen displayed a business profile from 3 years earlier. "Rising force in commercial real estate. Taylor Holdings reshapes downtown landscape." "Research," he explained, seeing my questioning look. "I spent half the night trying to understand what you've built." "And?" I prompted, curious about his conclusions. "It's impressive," he admitted, the word clearly difficult for him. "The Madison District redevelopment strategy, the sustainability initiatives, the community integration model. These aren't small achievements, Valerie." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely appreciating his acknowledgement. "It's taken years of careful planning." Gabriel studied me across the kitchen island, as if seeing me through new eyes. "Why real estate?" he asked suddenly. "Of all the businesses you could have pursued, why commercial property development?" The question surprised me, not because it was difficult to answer, but because in 8 years of marriage, Gabriel had never asked about my professional passions. "I believe in the power of physical spaces to shape communities," I explained, warming to the topic. "Commercial buildings aren't just assets on a balance sheet. They're where people work, connect, create value. By thoughtfully developing those spaces, I can influence not just economic outcomes, but social ones too." Gabriel listened attentively, nodding occasionally. As I outlined my vision for urban development, I realized this was perhaps the first genuine professional conversation we'd ever had. "The Downtown Revitalization Initiative," he said when I finished. "That really is central to your business model, isn't it? Not just a side project." "It's the heart of everything we do," I confirmed. "By investing in community infrastructure alongside our commercial properties, we create ecosystems rather than just buildings. Property values increase, tenant satisfaction improves, and the community benefits. Everyone wins." Gabriel glanced at his watch. "You should get ready for your meeting with Archer." The moment of connection was broken, but something had shifted subtly between us. For perhaps the first time, Gabriel had engaged with me as a business professional rather than merely his wife. As I prepared for the day, selecting another power suit from the collection I kept hidden at the back of my closet, I contemplated the next phase of this personal and professional transition. The public revelation was complete, but the integration of my dual identities and the potential recalibration of my marriage was just beginning. By 8:30 a.m., I was back at Riverside Tower, reviewing final documentation for the Archer partnership, with my legal team. The press coverage continued to expand, with national business publications now picking up the story. My PR director had organized the inquiries into categories, allowing me to focus on those that aligned with our strategic objectives. "The Business Journal wants to do a feature on women in commercial real estate, with you as the centerpiece," she reported. "And Commercial Property Monthly is requesting an exclusive on the Madison District Development Plan." I approved both, along with several other strategic media opportunities, while declining those that focused primarily on the personal angle. My goal was to establish Taylor Holdings' business credibility, not to become a celebrity. At 9 a.m. sharp, the Archer Investments team arrived for our partnership finalization meeting. Amanda Reeves greeted me warmly, followed by Marcus Daniels and their legal counsel. "You've certainly made a splash," Marcus commented as we walked to the conference room. "My phone hasn't stopped ringing with people asking if I knew about your double life." "And did you?" I asked, curious about his response. He smiled slightly. "I told them I've always made it a point to know who I'm doing business with," which is true, just not the whole truth. The meeting proceeded efficiently, with both teams reviewing the final partnership structure for the Madison District development. Taylor Holdings would contribute the land and oversee construction, while Archer would provide financing and handle tenant acquisition. The resulting mixed-use development would transform 5 city blocks of previously underutilized space into a vibrant urban hub. As we concluded, Amanda pulled me aside. "How are things at home?" Gabriel seemed processing when I left last night. "It's complicated," I acknowledged. 8 years of misconception isn't easily resolved. She nodded sympathetically. "For what it's worth, I think he was genuinely trying to understand your work. The questions he asked were thoughtful, not defensive." This insight warmed me unexpectedly. Perhaps there was more potential for growth in our relationship than I dared to hope. Back in my office, I found a message from Eleanor Simmons requesting lunch. Given everything happening, I almost declined. But Eleanor had been my guide through every major business decision for the past decade. Her perspective would be valuable now more than ever. We met at a small bistro several blocks from Riverside Tower, a discreet location where we could speak freely. "The business world is positively buzzing about you," Eleanor observed as we settled at our table. "Valerie Taylor, the secret real estate mogul. You've become an overnight sensation." "Hardly overnight," I replied with a wry smile. "More like 8 years in the making. And how are you handling the transition? Being fully visible after so long in the shadows?" I considered the question carefully. "It's liberating. Exhausting but liberating. No more code switching between worlds. No more careful omissions and half-truths." Eleanor nodded, studying me over her reading glasses. "And Gabriel? How is he adapting to discovering his wife has been a successful CEO all along?" "He's trying," I said, surprising myself with the assessment. "Last night and this morning, he actually asked about my business, not to criticize or dismiss, but to understand." "That's promising," Eleanor commented. "Many men in his position would retreat into wounded pride or anger." "There's been some of that too," I admitted, "but also genuine curiosity about what I've built. It's more than I expected, honestly." "So what's your strategy moving forward?" Eleanor asked, shifting into the mentor role that had guided me through countless business challenges, both professionally and personally. It was the question I'd been contemplating since the revelation. What did I want from this new phase of my life, now that my professional accomplishments were public? What kind of relationship did I want with Gabriel, if any? "Professionally, the path is clear," I began. "The Archer Partnership launches the Madison District development, which becomes the showcase for Taylor Holdings' integrated community development model. We leverage the current media attention to establish our brand identity, then focus on execution rather than publicity." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "And personally? That's less clear," I admitted. "Part of me wants to simply walk away, start, fresh with my identity finally intact. But another part wonders if Gabriel and I could build something new, something authentic, now that the deception is behind us." "What would that look like?" Eleanor pressed, always pushing me to envision concrete outcomes rather than abstract possibilities. I thought about our brief connection that morning, the first genuine professional conversation we'd ever shared. "Equality," I said finally. "Real partnership, not the one-sided arrangement we've had. Gabriel seeing me, really seeing me, as his equal in capability and ambition. No more diminishing comments, no more public undermining." "And do you think he's capable of that transformation?" Eleanor asked, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. It was the critical question, the one that would determine whether our marriage had any future. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think I need to give him the opportunity to try." Eleanor considered this, then nodded slowly. "A conditional second chance, with clear expectations and boundaries." "Exactly," I confirmed, feeling the strategy crystallize as we discussed it. "I can't change how Gabriel sees me, Only he can do that. But I can be clear about what I will and won't accept moving forward. As we finished lunch, I felt a growing sense of clarity. The professional path forward was straightforward. Execute our business plan, leverage the current attention to strengthen our market position, and continue building Taylor Holdings' reputation for innovative urban development. The personal path was more complex, but at least I now had a framework for approaching it. I would give Gabriel the opportunity to know the real me, to adapt to this new reality, but with clear expectations about how I deserved to be treated. If he couldn't make that adjustment, I was prepared to move forward alone. Returning to Riverside Tower, I found a delivery waiting in my office, a simple arrangement of white roses with a card. Congratulations on your public debut. The business community's gain is my significant loss. Your secret was safe with me. A. The initials belonged to Alexander Porter, CEO of Porter Development Group and one of my closest business confidants. Over the years, unlike Gabriel, Alexander had known about my dual identity from the beginning, having encountered me first in my professional capacity before meeting me socially as Gabriel's wife. He'd kept my secret faithfully, even playing along. At social functions where Gabriel introduced me as, "Just my wife, she handles our charity work." The rose arrangement was his way of acknowledging that those complicated dynamics were now over. I could finally be recognized publicly for my accomplishments. I placed the flowers on my conference table just as Rebecca appeared at the door. "Ms. Taylor, the building management team is here for your meeting about the tenant reception next week." The business of running Taylor Holdings continued, regardless of the personal drama unfolding in parallel. For the next several hours, I focused entirely on operational details, lease renewals, maintenance schedules, security upgrades, the unglamorous but essential components of commercial property management. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Gabriel. "Board meeting running late. Can we talk over dinner? I'll cook." The offer surprised me. Gabriel rarely cooked, generally considering it my domain as just a housewife. His willingness to prepare dinner suggested he was at least attempting to recalibrate our relationship. "I'll be home around 7, I replied, then returned to my work. As I wrapped up the day's final tasks, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in just 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I'd been preparing to reveal my professional identity while maintaining the careful separation that had defined the past 8 years. Now, that wall had come down completely, with consequences still unfolding in both my business and personal lives. The revelation had been necessary, both for Taylor Holdings' growth and for my own well-being. The question now was whether Gabriel could adapt to this new reality, whether our marriage could evolve into something authentic rather than the unequal arrangement it had been. As I gathered my things to leave, Rebecca handed me one final message slip. "Mr. Blackwell called from the law firm upstairs. He'd like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow regarding their lease renewal." I smiled slightly, appreciating the irony. Gabriel's managing partner now wanted to negotiate directly with me, the same woman who had sat silently through countless firm dinners, dismissed as merely decorative. "Schedule it for 11 a.m., I instructed, "and let's prepare the standard renewal package, plus the community engagement options we discussed." Driving home that evening, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction, not vindication. This had never been about revenge, but the simple pleasure of finally being recognized for my capabilities and achievements. The road ahead remained uncertain, particularly with Gabriel. But one thing was clear: I would never again accept being dismissed as just a housewife. Whatever came next would be on my terms, with my full identity acknowledged and respected. As I pulled into our driveway, I could see Gabriel through the kitchen window, moving around as he prepared dinner. Tonight would be the first test of whether our marriage could evolve into something new, something authentic, equal, and based on mutual respect rather than convenient misconceptions. I took a deep breath and headed inside, ready to discover what might be possible now that the truth was finally out. I arrived home shortly after 7 to find Gabriel in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up as he put the finishing touches on dinner. The rich aroma of coq au vin filled the air. He'd prepared my favorite dish, something he hadn't done in years. "This is a surprise," I said, setting my briefcase on the counter. "I can't remember the last time you cooked." "Neither can I," he admitted, glancing up briefly from the stove. Figured it was time to break some patterns. I moved to the wine cabinet, selecting a bottle of Pinot Noir that would complement the meal. As I opened it to breathe, Gabriel arranged 2 place settings at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room where we usually ate. Another small break from routine, another sign that he was making an effort. "How was your day?" he asked, the mundane question carrying unusual weight under the circumstances. "Productive," I replied, pouring us each a glass of wine. "We finalized the Archer partnership, met with building management, and handled about 50 press inquiries." "Yours?" "Strange," he said after a moment's consideration. "Everyone at the firm was talking about the Taylor Holdings announcement. No one made the connection to you, though. They still think of you as just your housewife?" I finished when he trailed off. Gabriel winced slightly. I deserved that. He served the meal, and we sat facing each other across the kitchen island, a casual arrangement that somehow felt more intimate than our usual formal dining. For several minutes, we ate in silence, the underlying tension making even this familiar activity feel precarious. "I met with James Blackwell today," Gabriel said, finally referring to his firm's managing partner. "He wants to form a committee to review our lease options now that the building's ownership has been revealed." "I'm meeting with him tomorrow," I replied. "My assistant scheduled it this afternoon." Gabriel looked up sharply. "You're personally handling our lease renewal?" "I handle all major tenant negotiations," I explained. "Nothing special about Blackwell and Pierce in that regard." He absorbed this, his expression unreadable. "That will be interesting." "I keep my business and personal lives separate, Gabriel. Your firm will receive the same fair treatment as any other tenant." He nodded slowly, taking a sip of wine. "I believe you. It's just disorienting. 24 hours ago, I thought I understood my life, my marriage. Now everything's been turned upside down." The vulnerable admission hung between us as we continued eating. Outside, twilight deepened into evening, the garden lights automatically illuminating the landscape I'd designed when we first bought the house. "I've been thinking about what you said this morning," Gabriel said as we finished the meal, "about why you chose real estate development. The way you described it, creating environments that shape communities, not just building properties. It was passionate, purposeful." "It is," I confirmed. "I've never seen it as just a business." "I realize now that I never asked," he continued, his gaze fixed on his wine glass. "In 8 years of marriage, I never once asked what drives you professionally. I just assumed that. I didn't have professional drives," I finished for him. "That planning charity galas and dinner parties fulfilled my ambitions." Gabriel didn't deny it. "I've been thinking about why I so completely failed to see who you really are. At first I wanted to blame you for the deception, but the truth is more uncomfortable than that." He rose, carrying our empty plates to the sink, in another break from our usual division of household labor. "The truth," he continued, his back to me as he rinsed the dishes, "is that I liked the version of our marriage where I was the accomplished one, the provider, the success story. It was comfortable, believing I was the one with the important career while you handled our domestic life." The admission cost him visibly, his shoulders tense as he placed the dishes in the dishwasher. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said quietly, appreciating the difficult self-reflection he was demonstrating. Gabriel turned back to face me, leaning against the counter. "I keep thinking about all those business dinners where I dismissed your contributions, changed the subject when you tried to share ideas, or worse, used you as an example of knowing your place. How did you stand it for so long? It was the question I'd been asking myself for years, one that had grown increasingly difficult to answer as Taylor Holdings expanded and my professional accomplishments accumulated in parallel with my growing dissatisfaction at home. At first, it was simpler to let you believe what you wanted, I explained. Your assumptions about me made your life neater, and confronting them seemed unnecessary when I could just build my business separately. But over time... Over time? Gabriel prompted when I trailed off. Over time, the gap between who I was with you and who I was in my professional life became harder to bridge. Every time you introduced me as just my wife, or dismissed my thoughts in public, it felt like a small erasure of my true self. Gabriel flinched but didn't interrupt. Last night at dinner was just the culmination of years of those small erasures, I continued. Hearing you mock the idea that I could understand business while sitting across from people who actually report to me professionally, something finally broke. The kitchen fell silent as Gabriel absorbed this. Through the windows, I could see the moon rising over our carefully landscaped garden, another part of my life where I'd allowed him to believe his narrative rather than assert my own vision. "Where does that leave us?" he asked finally, voicing the question that had been hovering unspoken between us since the revelation. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Part of me wants to believe we could start fresh, build a relationship based on who we truly are rather than who we've pretended to be. But another part wonders if the patterns are too deeply established, the damage too extensive. Gabriel nodded, accepting this uncertainty. For what it's worth, I'd like to try. Not to save the marriage we had. I see now that it was built on false premises, but to discover if there's something authentic possible between the real you and the man I hope I can become. It was more than I'd expected, a genuine acknowledgement of the problem and a willingness to change rather than defensive justification or wounded pride. "What would that look like to you?" I asked, curious about his vision for this potential new beginning. Gabriel considered the question carefully. "Honesty for a start. No more convenient fictions or comfortable assumptions. I want to know who you really are, professionally and personally. And equality," I added. "Real partnership, not the unbalanced arrangement we've had." "Yes," he agreed. "Though I expect that will be the harder adjustment for me, truly seeing you as my equal in ambition and capability, rather than reflexively assuming I know better." His self-awareness was promising, suggesting he might actually be capable of the transformation our relationship would require. "It won't happen overnight," I cautioned. 8 years of patterns don't change in a day." "I know," Gabriel acknowledged. "But last night's dinner was a wake-up call I desperately needed. Watching you today at that reception, seeing how respected you are in the business community, it forced me to confront how completely I've misjudged you and what that says about me." We moved to the living room, carrying our wine glasses, the kitchen tasks left unfinished, another small departure from our usual routine where I would have insisted on cleaning up immediately. Sitting across from each other, the physical distance between us mirroring the emotional space we were navigating, I considered Gabriel's proposal. Could we truly build something new from the ashes of our previous understanding? Or would old patterns inevitably reassert themselves once the shock of revelation faded? "I'm willing to try," I said finally. Not to return to what we had, but to explore what might be possible now that the truth is out. "But I need you to understand something important." Gabriel looked at me attentively, waiting. "I won't diminish myself again," I stated clearly. "I won't pretend to be less than I am, professionally or personally, to make you comfortable. If we move forward, it has to be with my whole self visible and valued." "I understand," he replied, his expression serious. "And I wouldn't want you to. I've spent the day reading about what you've built with Taylor Holdings. It's extraordinary, Valerie. I'd be a fool to ask you to hide that light again." Outside, a gentle rain began to fall. droplets illuminated by the garden lights as they pattered against the windows. The sound created a cocoon of intimacy around our conversation, a private space to contemplate this potential new beginning. "One day at a time," I suggested, setting my empty wine glass on the coffee table. "No grand promises or dramatic declarations, just honest effort to see each other clearly and build something authentic." Gabriel nodded, accepting these terms. "One day at a time," he echoed. As we sat in companionable silence, watching the rain transform our garden into a glistening wonderland, I felt a cautious optimism taking root. The revelation of my professional identity had been necessary, not just for Taylor Holdings' growth, but for my own integrity and well-being. Whether Gabriel and I could transform our marriage remained to be seen, but for the first time in years, I felt fully present in my own home, no longer divided between competing versions of myself. Whatever came next, I would face it as my complete, authentic self, never again just a housewife, but Valerie Taylor Williams in full. The next morning arrived with a sense of purpose. I woke early, my mind already mapping out the critical day ahead. The schedule was packed: a strategy meeting with my executive team at 8:30, the lease negotiation with Blackwell and Pierce at 11 hours, followed by lunch with potential investors, and finally, the formal announcement of our partnership with Archer Investments at a press conference scheduled for 3 p.m. Gabriel and I had parted amicably the night before, each retreating to separate rooms to process our conversation. His willingness to acknowledge his role in our dysfunctional dynamic had surprised me, offering a glimmer of hope that perhaps something salvageable remained in our relationship. Still, years of ingrained patterns wouldn't change overnight. We would need to prove our commitment to this new understanding through actions, not just words. As I dressed in one of my most powerful suits, a charcoal gray ensemble with subtle pinstripes that projected confidence without ostentation, I considered how to approach the meeting with James Blackwell. He'd known me for years as Gabriel's wife, the pleasant hostess at firm events, the woman who arranged dinner parties and charity galas. Today, he would meet me as Valerie Taylor, CEO of Taylor Holdings and owner of the building housing his prestigious law firm. While I finished applying my makeup, I heard Gabriel moving around in the kitchen below. Another break in our routine. Typically, he would already be at the office by this hour, leaving me to handle the domestic morning rituals alone. Downstairs, I found him preparing 2 travel mugs of coffee. "I thought you might want this for the road," he said, handing me one. "You mentioned having an early start." The small gesture struck me as significant, not just the coffee itself, but the fact that he'd remembered my schedule and adjusted his own routine accordingly. "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched. "This helps." "Your meeting with Blackwell is at 11? He asked, sipping from his own mug. I nodded. "Standard lease renewal discussion, nothing to worry about." "I'm not worried," Gabriel said, surprising. Me again. "James can be intimidating in negotiations, but something tells me you've handled tougher adversaries." Was that respect in his tone? The subtle acknowledgement of my professional capabilities felt unfamiliar coming from him, but welcome nonetheless. "A few," I acknowledged with a small smile. "Your firm will receive fair terms, Gabriel. No special treatment, positive or negative." "I know," he replied. "That's who you are. Fair, strategic, focused on the big picture. I just never applied those observations to your professional identity because I didn't believe you had one." The honest self-assessment was another promising sign. Gabriel wasn't just saying the right things. He seemed to be genuinely reckoning with his previous blindness. We left the house together, another departure from our usual separate morning departures. As we reached our cars, Gabriel paused. "Good luck today with the Archer announcement. From what I read, it's a significant coup for Taylor Holdings." "Thank you," I replied, momentarily disoriented by this new dynamic. my husband acknowledging my professional accomplishments as real and substantial. Good luck with your Mason deposition. His eyes widened slightly. You remembered about that? Of course, I said simply. Just because you didn't see my career doesn't mean I wasn't paying attention to yours. We parted with an awkward moment of hesitation, neither of us quite ready for the casual goodbye kiss that had once been automatic, yet both sensing that our standard formal nod no longer fit either. Eventually, Gabriel settled for a gentle touch on my arm before heading to his car. The drive downtown gave me time to mentally transition from the personal complexities at home to the professional challenges awaiting me at Riverside Tower. By the time I pulled into my reserved parking space, I was fully focused on the day's strategic objectives. "Morning, Ms. Taylor." Rebecca greeted me as I entered the executive suite. "The team is ready in the conference room, and I've prepared the Blackwell & Pierce lease renewal package as requested." I nodded, setting my briefcase on my desk and taking the folder she offered. Inside was the standard lease renewal agreement we offered all tenants, along with our community engagement options. Initiatives ranging from pro bono legal services for neighborhood organizations to participation in sustainability programs. Within the building, no special terms, but also no punitive conditions. Exactly what any other valued tenant would receive. The morning strategy meeting progressed efficiently, with each department head reporting on their progress integrating our newly public identity into their operations. Our marketing director presented updated branding materials that would roll out across all properties by the end of the month. The finance team outlined preliminary responses from investors now that our ownership structure was transparent. Legal reviewed potential regulatory considerations given our expanded public profile. Throughout it all, I maintained the calm, decisive leadership style that had built Taylor Holdings from a small portfolio into a significant market force. If my team noticed any distraction from the personal upheaval of the past 24 hours, they gave no indication. At 10:45, Rebecca appeared at the conference room door. "Mr. Blackwell and his team have arrived early. I've placed them in the East Conference Room with refreshments." I nodded, gathering my materials. "Perfect. Please let them know I'll join them in 5 minutes." As my executive team dispersed to their respective responsibilities, Eleanor Simmons lingered behind. "How are you really doing?" she asked once we were alone. "Yesterday was quite the revelation, both professionally and personally." "I'm adjusting," I replied honestly. "The professional transition has been smoother than expected. The personal, more complicated," she supplied when I trailed off. "Surprisingly hopeful, actually," I admitted. "Gabriel seems genuinely willing to reconsider our relationship dynamic. Whether that translates to meaningful change remains to be seen, but it's more than I expected." Eleanor studied me carefully. "Just remember, you deserve a partnership based on equality and mutual respect, not convenience or habit. Don't settle for less, even if it seems easier in the short term." Her concern touched me. Eleanor had witnessed firsthand the gradual erosion of my marriage, as Gabriel's dismissive attitude had grown more pronounced over the years. She'd been the one encouraging me to assert my true identity long before I felt ready to take that step. "I won't," I promised. "This isn't about saving what we had. That relationship is gone. It's about discovering if something new and authentic is possible." She nodded, satisfied with my response. "Now go show James Blackwell why you're the most formidable property owner in the city. Just because he's known you as Gabriel's wife doesn't mean he can't learn to respect you as his landlord." With that bolstering reminder, I made my way to the East Conference Room. Through the glass walls, I could see James Blackwell and 3 other partners from the firm seated around the table, reviewing documents while making small talk. None of them noticed me immediately, giving me a moment to observe their body language. Slightly tense, papers arranged precisely, the unmistakable preparation of attorneys ready for a negotiation. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door. "Good. Morning, gentlemen, thank you for coming. James Blackwell rose immediately, his expression a fascinating mixture of confusion, recalibration, and professional courtesy. The other partners followed suit, their reactions ranging from surprise to mild embarrassment as they recognized me. Mrs. Williams, Blackwell began, then quickly corrected himself. I mean, Ms. Taylor, thank you for meeting with us. Please sit. I gestured to their chairs, taking my place at the head of the table. I understand you have questions about your lease renewal given the recent ownership revelation. Blackwell cleared his throat, visibly working to reconcile the woman he'd known socially with the business executive now sitting before him. Yes, well, it was quite a surprise to discover that our building is owned by your partner's wife? I supplied calmly when he struggled to find an appropriate phrasing. Precisely, he acknowledged, regaining some composure. It raises certain questions about our lease terms going forward, whether special considerations might apply, given the personal connection. I opened the folder Rebecca had prepared, removing the standard lease renewal package and sliding it across the table. Blackwell & Pierce has been a valued tenant for 5 years. This package represents our standard renewal terms for all tenants. In good standing, fair market rates with options for community engagement that provide mutual benefit. The attorneys exchanged glances, clearly having expected either preferential treatment or possibly punitive terms given Gabriel's behavior. The straightforward professionalism caught them off guard. I assure you, gentlemen, I continued. Taylor, Holdings maintains strict separation between business relationships and personal matters. Your firm will receive exactly the same consideration as any other tenant, no more, no less. As Blackwell and his team reviewed the documents, I could see the gradual shift in their demeanor. The initial discomfort at negotiating with someone they'd previously dismissed as merely Gabriel's wife gave way to professional respect as they recognized the fairness and strategic vision reflected in the terms. These community engagement options, one of the younger partners noted, they align remarkably well with our pro bono program initiatives. We've found that integrating tenant expertise with neighborhood needs creates sustainable value for everyone involved, I explained. Your firm's legal services could make a significant difference for several organizations in our development zones. For the next 45 minutes, we discussed specific terms, scheduling, and implementation details. Throughout the conversation, I maintained my professional composure, neither seeking approval nor showing any sign that these men had witnessed me being publicly diminished by my husband countless times at firm events. By the time they rose to leave, the attorneys had transitioned completely from seeing me as Gabriel's wife to recognizing me as a formidable business leader in my own right. The transformation was visible in their body language, their tone, and most tellingly, in the respectful way they now addressed me. Ms. Taylor, Blackwell said as we concluded, extending his hand, this has been most illuminating. We'll review these terms with our committee and respond formally by the end of the week. I look forward to it, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. Blackwell & Pierce has been an excellent anchor tenant. I hope we can continue our relationship on these new, more transparent terms. As they filed out, I noticed Gabriel standing in the hallway, having apparently just finished a meeting of his own in another conference room. He exchanged brief greetings with his colleagues before approaching my door. How did it go? He asked, lingering in the doorway. Professionally, I replied simply, I think Mr. Blackwell has finally recognized that I understand lease terms and market valuations after all. Gabriel winced slightly at the reminder of his previous dismissiveness, but nodded. I saw his expression as they left. You impressed? Him. The observation wasn't framed as surprise or disbelief, but as simple acknowledgement of my capability, another small but significant shift in our dynamic. The Archer announcement is at 3? He asked, changing the subject. I nodded. Press? Conference in the atrium. Gabriel hesitated, then asked, would it be inappropriate if I attended? Not as your husband necessarily, but as a tenant with interest in the building's future developments. The request surprised me. Was this another gesture of recognition? An attempt to publicly acknowledge my professional identity after years of diminishment? That would be fine, I replied carefully. All tenants are welcome. As Gabriel left to return to his firm's offices upstairs, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The morning had gone exactly as planned professionally, with each piece falling into place for Taylor Holdings' continued strategic positioning in the market. The personal terrain remained more uncertain, but Gabriel's small gestures of respect and recognition suggested at least the possibility of genuine change. With the Blackwell meeting successfully concluded, I turned my attention to the afternoon's critical announcement. The Archer partnership represented not just a significant business expansion, but also the first major public initiative of Taylor Holdings' new transparent era. Everything about today's press conference, from the positioning to the messaging, to my own presentation, would set the tone for this next chapter of my professional life. As I reviewed my talking points one final time, I felt a sense of alignment I hadn't experienced in years. The compartmentalization that had defined my existence was dissolving, allowing me to bring my full self to every aspect of my life. Whatever happened with Gabriel, this integration of my personal and professional identities was something I would never relinquish again. The press conference announcing the Taylor Holdings partnership with Archer Investments was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. The building's atrium had been transformed into a media venue, with a small stage, professional lighting, and rows of chairs already filling with journalists, business leaders, and community representatives. Through the glass walls of my office, I could see the growing crowd, including several tenants from throughout the building. My PR director handed me the final press packet for review. "Everything's ready, Ms. Taylor. We've positioned the announcement to emphasize the community development aspects of the partnership, rather than just the financial details. It aligns perfectly with your vision." I nodded approval, scanning the document one last time. The partnership with Archer would transform the Madison district from an underutilized collection of aging properties into a vibrant, mixed-use neighborhood with affordable housing, green spaces, and sustainable commercial development. It represented everything I'd been working toward, not just profitable growth but meaningful community impact. "Ms. Taylor," Rebecca appeared at the door. "It's time." As I gathered my notes and smoothed my jacket, I caught a glimpse of Gabriel, entering the atrium below. He was speaking with Amanda Reeves, their conversation appearing relaxed and professional. When Amanda pointed toward my office, Gabriel glanced up, meeting my gaze across the distance. He offered a small nod of encouragement, subtle but genuine. Walking to the stage a few minutes later, I felt a strange sense of completion. The journey that had begun 8 years ago with a small inheritance and a vision for urban development had reached a pivotal milestone. The path had required me to live a divided life for years, but today those divisions were finally dissolving. "Good afternoon," I began, looking out over the assembled crowd. "Thank you all for joining us for this important announcement." As I outlined the partnership details, I noticed Gabriel standing at the back of the room, listening attentively. Not checking his phone, not looking bored or dismissive, but genuinely engaged with the business strategy I was presenting. It was such a stark contrast to his behavior at countless social events, where I'd tried to participate in business discussions only to be subtly or not so subtly silenced. The press conference proceeded smoothly, with Amanda joining me on stage for the formal signing and joint statement. The questions from reporters were substantive, focused on the development strategy and economic impact rather than the sensational aspects of my dual identity revelation. My PR team had done an excellent job steering the narrative toward Taylor Holdings' business vision. As the formal portion concluded and attendees broke into networking groups, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers and potential partners. Through the crowd, I occasionally caught glimpses of Gabriel, who had remained at a respectful distance, allowing me this professional moment without inserting himself. Nearly an hour later, as the event was winding down, Gabriel approached. He had waited until I was momentarily alone, showing unexpected sensitivity to the complexities of our situation. "That was impressive," he said simply. "The scope of the Madison District vision, the integration of commercial development with community needs. It's extraordinary, Valerie." Coming from Gabriel, this straightforward acknowledgement of my professional accomplishment felt more significant than the effusive praise I'd received from others. "Thank you," I replied. "It's been in development for over a year." "While I was telling everyone you were planning charity galas," he noted, the self-recrimination evident in his tone. Before I could respond, Rebecca appeared at my elbow. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the mayor's office is on the phone. They've seen the announcement and want to discuss potential public-private partnerships for the eastern section of the development." "I should take that," I said to Gabriel. He nodded. "Of course. I'll see you at home?" The question carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Would we continue the process of rebuilding our relationship? Was there a foundation for something new between us? Yes, I decided. I'll be there around 7. As Gabriel left, I returned to my office to take the mayor's call, the remainder of the afternoon passing in a blur of follow-up meetings and strategic planning sessions. By the time I gathered my things to leave, the city was bathed in the golden light of early evening, the skyscrapers gleaming against the darkening sky. The drive home gave me time to reflect on the remarkable transformation of the past 48 hours. The professional revelation had gone according to plan, positioning Taylor Holdings for its next phase of growth. The personal revelation had been more unpredictable, exposing the deep fissures in my marriage, but also revealing unexpected potential for genuine change. When I arrived home, I found Gabriel in the kitchen again, this time arranging takeout from my favorite Vietnamese restaurant on plates. "I thought you might be tired after such a big day," he explained, noticing my surprised expression. "Seemed simpler than cooking." The consideration behind the gesture touched me. Once again, Gabriel was demonstrating through actions rather than words that he was willing to recalibrate our relationship. We ate at the kitchen island, sharing details of our respective days. For the first time in our marriage, Gabriel asked thoughtful questions about my business strategies and listened attentively to my responses. In turn, I engaged with his description of a complex legal challenge, offering perspectives that he considered with genuine interest rather than reflexive dismissal. It was a simple dinner conversation, yet revolutionary in its mutual respect and authentic engagement. As we cleared the plates together, another small but significant break from our established patterns, Gabriel paused, his expression growing serious. "I've been thinking about something all day," he said. "When you revealed your ownership of Riverside Tower, you could have used that leverage against me, against the firm. After years of dismissive treatment, no one would have blamed you for some measure of retribution. But you didn't. You offered fair terms, professional courtesy, respect." I considered his observation. "Revenge was never the point, Gabriel. I didn't build Taylor Holdings to prove something to you or anyone else. I built it because I love creating spaces that transform communities, because I'm good at seeing potential where others don't. The revelation was about authenticity, not retribution." He nodded slowly. "That's what I realized today, watching you, at that press conference. This isn't just a business for you, it's a passion, a calling. And I completely missed it for 8 years because I couldn't see beyond my own preconceptions." The frank admission hung between us, more powerful in its honesty than any elaborate apology could have been. "I can't change the past," Gabriel continued, after a moment. "I can't undo years of dismissing your capabilities or treating you as less than my equal. But I can promise you this. I will never make that mistake again. If you're willing to try building something new between us, I'm committed to seeing you, really seeing you, as you are. It was the most genuine moment we'd shared in years, perhaps ever. The protective walls I'd constructed to compartmentalize my life were fully down now, allowing me to be present as my complete self. I'd like that, I replied simply. Not a return to what was, but something new. Equal, authentic, honest. Equal, authentic, honest, he repeated, nodding. A fresh start. 3 months later, I stood at the podium during the groundbreaking ceremony for the Madison District development, the culmination of years of careful planning now becoming reality. In the front row sat Gabriel, watching with genuine pride as I outlined Taylor Holdings' vision for the project. Our marriage was still evolving, the new dynamic requiring constant attention and occasional course corrections. There were moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves, times when Gabriel automatically began to interrupt me, or when I instinctively held back my opinions. But each time we recognized these slips and recalibrated, committed to building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than convenient misconceptions. The professional world had adjusted quickly to the revelation of my identity. Taylor Holdings' reputation had only strengthened with transparency, and our partnership with Archer Investments had opened doors to even more ambitious projects. What had begun as my grandmother's modest legacy had grown into a transformative force in urban development. As I concluded my remarks and symbolically turned the first shovel of earth for the project, I caught Gabriel's eye in the audience. His smile carried none of the condescension that had once been habitual, only authentic admiration and respect. The journey from just a housewife to acknowledged business leader had been long and at times painful. The parallel journey from unequal marriage to authentic partnership remained ongoing, its ultimate destination still uncertain. But standing there, fully integrated in my professional and personal identity for the first time in 8 years, I felt a profound sense of wholeness. Whatever the future held, I would face it as my complete, authentic self, never again diminished or compartmentalized, never again just anything. I was Valerie Taylor Williams, wife, CEO, visionary. Finally, seen, finally whole, finally free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.